Every time you talk to your dog in that slightly higher, slightly weirder voice, they tilt their head. It looks like they're confused. It looks like they're listening harder. But scientists who've actually studied this movement say that's not what's happening at all. And the real reason is stranger and honestly a little more impressive than confusion. Stay with me, because the answer isn't what you'd guess, and there's a twist at the end that even surprises vets. Here's the first thing almost nobody knows. Dogs with short, flat muzzles, like pugs or bulldogs, tilt their heads far less often than dogs with long snouts, like collies or greyhounds. That's not random. That single fact is actually the biggest clue to what's really going on. But to understand why, we need to start with a theory everyone assumes is correct, because it's only half true. The theory most people have heard is that dogs tilt their heads to hear better, and there's real truth to this. A dog's outer ear, or pinna, helps funnel sound, and tilting the head slightly changes the angle sound waves hit each ear, which can help a dog pinpoint exactly where a sound is coming from, especially higher-pitched or unfamiliar noises. So far, that tracks with what you'd assume. But here's the problem. Dogs tilt their heads even when a sound isn't unfamiliar at all, even when it's you, saying a word they already know perfectly well. So sound alone doesn't fully explain it. Something else is happening. And this is where that muzzle-length clue from a minute ago comes back in. Remember how flat-faced dogs tilt less? If this was purely about hearing, muzzle shape shouldn't matter much at all. But it clearly does. So researchers started asking a very different question. What if the head tilt isn't primarily about the dog's ears? What if it's about their eyes? Here's the part that surprises most owners. A dog's own snout can actually block part of its view of your face, especially the lower half, your mouth, which is where a huge amount of emotional information lies. Some researchers believe tilting the head shifts the muzzle out of the way, giving the dog a clearer look at your expression while you're talking. This would also explain the muzzle length pattern perfectly. Short snout dogs don't need to tilt because their own face was never blocking the view in the first place. Suddenly, that random sounding fact from the beginning isn't random at all. It's the whole key. So if this is right, the head tilt isn't really about confusion. It's closer to a dog trying to read you, combining the sound of your voice with the shape of your mouth and face at the same time, the same way humans lean in and squint slightly when they're trying to catch every detail of what someone's saying. Some behaviors believe this is part of why dogs seem to tilt more during emotionally loaded moments. A happy tone, a question, a name they associate with something exciting. Because those are exactly the moments where reading your face carries the most information. But there's a third layer to this that most videos never mention. Some trainers have observed that dogs tilt their heads more often at the exact moment they hear a familiar word buried inside a sentence. Their name, walk, treat. Almost like their brain is doing a quick search and pausing to process the hit. This isn't fully proven the way sound localization is, but it lines up with something else we know. Dogs are capable of recognizing dozens, sometimes hundreds, of individual words. So that tilt might be a visible moment of a dog's brain working through, wait, I know that one. So at this point, you might think we've solved it. Better hearing, clearer view of your face, a flicker of word recognition. 3 real reasons, all working together. That would be a satisfying place to end this video. But there's one more thing you need to know, and it's the part that actually matters most for your dog's health. Everything we've covered so far applies to a normal, situational head tilt, the kind that happens when you talk to your dog, then stops. But vets flag a very different pattern as a warning sign. A head tilt that's constant, that stays to one side even when you're not talking, or that appears suddenly and doesn't go away. That kind of tilt isn't about listening or watching your face at all. It can be a sign of an inner ear infection, a vestibular issue, or in rare cases something more serious affecting balance. The tell is simple. A curious tilt is brief, changes sides, and happens in response to sound or interaction. A medical tilt tends to be constant, one-sided, and often comes with other signs like stumbling, unusual eye movement, or a loss of balance. Which raises an obvious question. How do you actually tell the difference in the moment without a vet visit? The short version, context and duration. If it only happens when you're speaking and stops right after, that's the curious version we spent this whole video explaining. If it's happening constantly or with no trigger at all, that's your cue to get it checked rather than film it for a video. So back to that moment we opened with, you talking in that ridiculous voice, your dog tilting its head at you like you're the most interesting thing in the room. Now you know what's actually happening underneath it. Your dog adjusting its ears to catch the sound, moving its own snout out of the way to read your expression, and possibly even processing a word it recognizes, all in about half a second. It's not confusion. It's closer to your dog paying you the most focused attention it's capable of giving. Not bad for a movement most people assume just meant, huh? If you want to test this tonight, say your dog's name in a totally flat, boring tone, then say it again in that high, excited voice you use when you're happy to see them, and watch how differently they react. If this changed the way you see the head tilt, subscribe for more science-backed dog behavior breakdowns. And tell me in the comments, does your dog tilt more to one side than the other?